This presentation about biodata is a collaborative effort from Melissa Hadjinian, Gina Cenneno, George Rutz, Daniel O'Neill, and Chad Evangelous. We will discuss what biodata is and provide you with some examples. We will also cover how to administer biodata and how to use the results. Lastly, we will argue the pros and cons of biodata and provide our recommendation for the use of biodata. What is biodata? Biodata is a method businesses can use to try to predict someone's future behavior. The method is based on the notion that previous behaviors are the best predictor for future behaviors. The bio in biodata stands for biographical, not biological. Therefore, methods aim to collect biographical information about a person that has proven to correlate to good job performance. Certain people have particular parts of their history that can make them more likely to be good at a target job. For example, during World War II, while looking for potential fighter pilots, biodata was used to find people who, as children, enjoyed building and flying model airplanes. Biodata measures items about past behaviors and events in the categories of personality attributes, attitudes, experiences, interests, skills, and abilities. It works by analyzing past events and experiences in many areas, like a work context, where someone may have quit a job without giving notice, an educational setting, where a person may or may not have graduated from college, a family environment in which a person may have traveled considerably growing up, community activities, where a subject may have led a Cub Scout troop, or other domains, like a person being active in local politics. In order to develop the use of biodata, a business needs to start by defining the performance they are seeking. This should be in a form that will help them decide the next step. For example, using standard descriptions of leadership or technical abilities. Next, you need to find a significant population from which you can extract sufficient members of high performers in the job you are analyzing. Thus, a large company may study international managers who have proven successful in managing virtual teams, whilst an army may seek individual soldiers who have shown exemplary battlefield bravery, perhaps via those who have been awarded medals. Next comes the collection of data. You need to design a structured and repeatable data collection method to extract as much biographical information as you can handle. This may include investigation of childhood events, education, jobs performed, and self-reported significant life events. You also need to correlate performance with biographical data. This step is largely statistical, as the biographical data is coded and correlated with job performance. Draft a questionnaire for each hypothesized scale and applies to a large sample. Each question is tested and results are factor analyzed to find desirable clustering. When collecting biodata information, it can be a good idea to hide the key characteristics you are seeking within other irrelevant information, which also may be found in your researches. Where possible, collect hard, verifiable items, such as examinations passed. Where this is not possible, the potential for faking must be taken into account. Biodata may be collected in scripted format. Finally, try it out. For example, on the people who supplied the data in the first place.
My name is Chad Evangelous, and I'll be covering an example of biodata. So after doing some research, I settled on Google as the company to use for an example of biodata use. Um, I settled on Google because they're a very large company, they're very well known, they're one of the world's greatest innovators, um, and they really have bought into the use of biodata in their hiring processes. And I think for them, it's paid off so far. In 2006, Google started utilizing biodata. Before that, Google basically had two parameters for how they hired employees. It was based on academic performance and interview skill. So, as far as academic performance, for engineering positions, they required at least a 3.7 GPA. For sales positions, they required at least a 3.0 GPA. And they hired almost exclusively from Ivy League, MIT, Caltech, or Stanford. As far as the interview process, that was the other parameter that Google utilized for hiring. They had a very rigorous interview process. Um, they would often have 6 separate interviews, and they would utilize these brain teaser questions. Uh, Google used to be really well known for these crazy brain teaser questions that they would ask their applicants. So some examples of those questions are: how many golf balls can you fit into a school bus? How much should you charge to wash all the windows in Seattle? Design an evacuation plan for San Francisco. Why are manhole covers round? A man pushed his car to a hotel and lost his fortune. What happened? So in 2006, Google decided that they wanted to evaluate their hiring process. To do that, they administered a 300 question survey to all of their current employees. On this slide, I've listed 10 of those 300 questions to give you an idea of the diversity of information they were gathering. Some samples here: is your workspace messy or neat? Are you an extrovert or introvert? What magazines do you subscribe to? What pets do you have? Have you ever been the president or leader of a group? What is your ideal project size? Have you ever turned a profit at your own non-tech side business? Have you ever started your own nonprofit? Have you ever started a club or recreational group? Have you ever set a regional, state, country, or world record? So data from that initial 300 question employee survey was then compared to 25 measures of employee performance. Uh, Examples include employee performance reviews, either by a supervisor or by peers, compensation, and organizational citizenship behaviors. So the idea was to try to correlate data from that survey to actual job performance of their current employees. So Todd Carlisle, who works for Google as an analyst, and he has a doctorate in organizational psychology, he analyzed what turned out to be 2 million data points that the study collected, and he found that Google's previous methods for evaluating employees were ineffective. And he also found that too much education can be detrimental to some jobs. He also noticed that no single factor identified top performers in each job title. So Dr. Carlisle was able to develop multiple surveys to find candidates across several areas. So he had different surveys for engineering, sales, finance, and human resources are some examples. So data from those surveys was run through an algorithm which Dr. Carlisle created, and then applicants are scored on a 0 to 100 scale, and they use that process to eliminate low scoring candidates. That's really important for Google because they receive over a million job applications a year. So they needed some way to be able to sort through those and eliminate candidates from the process based on more than just GPA in college. So Laszlo Bock is Google's Senior Vice President of People Operations. He was interviewed recently, and here are some interesting quotes from that interview relating to this 2006 study. First, he says, "Years ago, we did a study to determine whether anyone at Google is particularly good at hiring. We looked at tens of thousands of interviews, and everyone who had done the interviews and what they scored the candidate and how that person ultimately performed in their job. We found zero relationship. It's a complete random mess." So what stood out to me about that quote, first off, tens of thousands of interviews they studied and tried to correlate the ratings of interviews with the performance of employees, and they found zero correlation. Second quote here says, "One of the things we've seen from all our data crunching is that GPAs are worthless as a criteria for hiring, and test scores are worthless. No correlation at all except for brand new college grads, where there's a slight correlation. Google famously used to ask everyone for a transcript and GPAs and test scores, but we don't anymore, unless you're just a few years out of school. We found that they don't predict anything." So I mentioned a few slides ago that prior to 2006, before Google's implementation of biodata in their interview process, they would use those wild brain teaser questions. So those have recently been banned by Google, and in that same interview, Laszlo Bock was asked about those brain teaser questions. And he said, on the hiring side, we found that brain teasers are a complete waste of time. How many golf balls can you fit into an airplane? How many gas stations are in Manhattan? A complete waste of time. They don't predict anything. They serve primarily to make the interviewer feel smart. So that's a very strongly worded quote. And basically, he's saying that the two parameters that Google utilized for hiring, which was GPA, what college you went to, and how you responded to brain teasers during interviews, he's basically saying that none of those things correlate to job performance. Second quote here, he says, when we look at any data related to our people, we treat the data with great respect. Typically, we give people an option to participate in anything, either confidentially or anonymously. The lesson for anyone looking at this space is that you need to construct this really powerful tent of trust in the people gathering the data and how they use it. So here, Laszlo Bach is he's commenting on the ethical issue of biodata, and he's trying to reassure the interviewer here that Google respects the data and they're careful about how they use it, and they allow their employees to participate confidentially or anonymously. So that, I think, is an important way to wrap up Google's use of biodata, is that they're very particular about making sure they are ethical in their use of biodata, and that they're protective of the information they use, and that they build, as they call it, a tent of trust with the people who gather the data and use the data.
How is biodata administered? There are a few different methods in which biodata can be collected. In this section, we will review each of the most common methods, such as critical incident technique, the interview, and structured questionnaires, as well as the mediums used during collection. We will also discuss some advantages and disadvantages to each method. One thing to keep in mind is that each method may be administered individually or in a large group at once. Critical incident technique. This method uses situational or behavioral questions to have the subject describe an incident, whether positive or negative, and then either through more probing or conversation, explain how they reacted during that situation. The person asking the question is usually looking for a few specific aspects within the answer to the question or questions. They are situation or task, action, and result. For situation or task, they are looking for the subject to give them an idea of what the scenario was or what responsibility was given to them to complete. For action, the subject is expected to describe what steps they took to resolve the situation or complete the task. For result, this is when the subject would describe the outcome of his or her actions. For example, were they successful or not? One of the advantages of this method is that it's useful in drawing out details that you may not discover using other methods. A disadvantage could be that the subject is not willing to cooperate or be truthful, or does not remember the details of a situation that would help demonstrate the necessary skills. This method could be administered verbally, electronically, or through paper and pencil. The interview. This method consists of one or more interviewers and typically done one subject at a time verbally. During an interview, the interviewer or interviewers will ask a series of questions to the subject. This can be a predetermined set of very specific questions, or they can be a sampling of questions that can be used as more of a guideline. This method could have the subject explain a process they use, or to ask them to talk them through a typical day in their current role. An interview has an advantage of being more exploratory and flexible. It gives the interviewer the ability to ask more questions, to probe deeper should he or she feel the need to arise. It also has the ability to feel more comfortable for the subject and more conversational. A disadvantage to this method is that the subject may provide answers based on what they want you to hear as opposed to more truthful answers. It also can easily veer off topic into areas of interest that have no value to the process. Structured questionnaire. This method tends to consist of a list of standard questions to be answered. It could be in the format of questions or a checklist. It can also include aspects of personality, cognitive aspects, behavioral elements, and contextual variables. Some examples would be basic levels of education, interest, hobbies, or goals, use of technology and skills, or pay scales. This method is useful for ensuring that a large range of areas are covered and can be analyzed for multiple purposes. It is also helpful in establishing consistency when applying the same analyst to a number of people performing the same job. A disadvantage could arise if there are aspects missing from the questionnaire, resulting in these details being lost during the analysis. This method could be administered electronically, through paper and pencil, or, in rare instances, verbally.
Once biographical data has been collected from an individual, certain aspects of their personality can be analyzed. The results can lead the examiner to draw conclusions about two things. Will this person be a fit within the context of the organization? And is this person right for the specific function in question? Certain personality traits are viewed as either universally desirable or universally undesirable, and the collection of biodata can help to understand which traits the individual in question possesses. These traits are independent of the reason for collection and will help to reveal if a potential applicant possesses the skills needed to thrive in an organizational context. Some universally desirable qualities are honesty, motivation, conscientiousness, self-discipline, persistence, and team working ability. These qualities are important to an organization, and if an applicant is missing one of these traits, they run the risk of being siphoned out of the talent pool immediately. Likewise, there are certain qualities that a person may possess that are universally unacceptable. These qualities are dishonesty, a lack of integrity, being unable to handle stress, and an uncontrollable temper. Similar to the concept that missing a desirable quality can eliminate an individual from consideration, possession of an undesirable quality can do the same. Essentially, the desirable qualities outlined are associated with productive employees, while those which are undesirable are associated with counterproductive. Biographical data can also be used to target whether an individual will be successful in a specific role by measuring qualities that are viewed as necessary for success. The Myers-Briggs type indicator is a widely used tool that helps to organize biographical data in a useful way. The MBTI consists of 4 dimensions that assess personality. These dimensions are social interaction, style of decision making, and preferences for gathering data and making decisions. Each of these dimensions consists of an index that identifies personality type for an individual. For the social interaction dimension, the index choices are introvert and extrovert. Introverts are energized by their own thoughts and perceptions, while extroverts draw strength from the people and things around them. For the data gathering preference dimension, the index choices are sensing and intuiting. Sensing individuals draw conclusions by facts gained from the 5 senses, while intuiting individuals connect relationships and possibilities to make decisions. For the decision-making preference dimension, the index choices are thinking and feeling. Those who are thinkers prefer to make logical decisions, while those who feel use emotions and values. For the decision-making style dimension, the index choices are judging and perceiving. Judgers prefer closure and are more decisive, while perceivers will postpone judgment and continue to gather and process the information available. Once an index is assigned in each of the 4 dimensions, then the individual in question can be categorized into one of 16 possible profiles, each of which outline the strengths which are relevant to a certain function. There are a number of industries and institutions where the use of biographical data can be beneficial. The most applicable to this class is employment. Businesses and organizations can use biographical data to do one of many things, which include employee selection, to choose the correct individuals for specific job functions, team building, and team selection to help individuals within a firm come together as a cohesive unit and to select team members that have a high likelihood of functionality. Conflict management to identify the personality types of the employees involved in conflict and use the best methods to create a win-win conflict resolution. Performance appraisal to determine if the person being evaluated is being placed in the right environment or given the correct tools for success based on their personality and preferences. And career path decisions to help an employee who is looking 5 or 10 years down the road at the correct path to take within an organization. Aside from being able to be used in the corporate structure, biodata can also be used in other areas. One of these is relationship compatibility. Biographical data can be used by dating websites to match individuals with certain preferences to those who are like-minded and thus create a high likelihood of harmonious relations. Criminal activity. The police can use biographical data to assess if a criminal is likely to be a one-time offender or if the individual has the propensity to break society's rules on multiple occasions. Substance abuse. Rehab centers can use biographical data to draw conclusions about why a specific person used drugs in the first place and the best methods for treatment based on the user profile. Government officials. Regulatory agencies can use biographical data to assess whether current or future candidates are at high risk for taking bribes or becoming corrupt officials. Sports drafting or recruiting. College or professional teams can analyze what drives an athlete to perform at a high level and if the individual possesses the motivation necessary for success. Lastly, in college recruiting. Similar to analyzing an athlete, universities can use biodata to assess students' motivation and whether they possess the tools necessary to graduate.
The pros and cons of biodata. As with any other selection method, there are both advantages and disadvantages to using biodata. Because biodata tests are computer-based, administration and scoring of the test is really quite simple. Companies have the option of developing their own biodata test through in-house research and statistics, or they can choose a test offered by a third-party vendor. Having the option to outsource the test further simplifies the process. Biodata tests can be extremely efficient in mass hiring scenarios. With large groups of applicants, the test results can easily identify which individuals have the most potential for the position. The test can eliminate time wasted on interviews with ill-suited applicants. Money can be saved as well as time. With finding the most qualified employees through biodata, companies will see a cost savings on hiring, training, and promoting because only the best candidates will be selected for the position. Money will not be wasted on hiring and training the wrong person for the wrong job. During the application stages, job candidates will already be expecting to fill out some type of job application, so an additional questionnaire will not take much additional time and effort on. Another advantage of biodata is the high validity and accuracy offered by the test. All items presented in the biodata test have been previously proven to have a significant statistical relationship with performance. Therefore, no time is wasted with questions that will not provide results. Because of the proven statistical relationships, the test results can be achieved with very few questions. This reduces the amount of time a job candidate would spend on the test. Biodata testing has also shown to have a less adverse impact than other selection methods. Adverse impact is a substantially different rate of selection which works to the disadvantage of a certain age, sex, ethnicity, etc. Biodata testing is advantageous because of its verifiability. The results of any test are able to be checked for accuracy, and therefore candidates are less inclined to produce false or misleading responses. Responses to biodata testing are also less discretionary than personality tests. In personality testing, the employer is relying on the applicant to provide accurate information on their personality. In biodata testing, the applicant is merely responding to biographical, factual type questions. On the same note, a candidate may prefer to answer a few background questions than to take a lengthy test of personality. Although biodata has many advantages, there are also some disadvantages associated with this testing method. For example, the test lacks in what is known as face validity. It may be difficult for test takers to establish a connection between job performance and the given questions in a test. An example shows that the best predictor of success in jewelry sales was how many times have you purchased real estate. An Another disadvantage is known as the Dust Bowl empiricism theory, which shows that items are related without any psychological reason why. So obviously, this could cause some confusion among job candidates as to why they are being asked certain questions that they feel are not directly related to the position. Another disadvantage is the large size of the sample needed to construct a biodata test. This large of a sample size may not be available to small organizations wishing to develop their own in-house assessments. Lastly, biodata testing does not hold true forever and will eventually need to be revalidated and reweighed to maintain the accuracy of the results. Do we recommend using biodata? After compiling our research on biodata, we have come to the decision that we would recommend biodata. Our recommendation is based on the following reasons. First, the questions used in biodata testing have been proven to have significant relationships with performance. Second, biodata testing is more reliable and accurate compared to other selection methods. Third, biodata has a success record with Google, a large, prominent company. Last, biodata saves companies time and money by eliminating negative outcomes in the hiring process.